Nadir holds a degree in aeronautical engineering from Glasgow University and a PhD from the University of Putra in Malaysia. With a decade of experience in the administration, in the aviation and aerospace industry, he is a specialist in strategic aviation management, aerospace value chain, and space business and applications. He is a pioneer in the research and development of aerogel technologies while collaborating with several entities, including Rolls-Royce, the University of Limoges, the Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology, amongst others. He has also served as a senior lecturer at the Management and Science University of Malaysia, where he was instrumental in the design and implementation of the aviation management and piloting undergraduate degree programs, and also headed the Aerospace Communication Technology Research Group. Dr. Nadir has been a member of several professional institutions, including our society, the AESM, the Royal Aeronautical Society, the Institution of Engineering and Technology, IET, the Malaysian Society of Engineering and Technology, MISET, the Aerospace Society, AEROS. He is an executive member of the IET Aerospace Group, where he is able to serve the society holistically. As a participant in numerous international conferences, Nadir is an occasional writer in academic journals and professional magazines, as well as being a reviewer with various publication houses. Dr. Nadir Bikan is the founder and managing director of the Aeronad Group, a private aerospace-oriented organization with 6 subsidiaries. He is an advocate for harmonizing academia with industry, and he brought forward the concept of Acadustry through Aeronad Group to contribute towards a better aerospace and aviation ecosystem locally, regionally, and beyond for sustainable nation. Dr. Bikan will recognize that the new environment has changed beyond recognition and is here to stay and needs to be reassessed. We would certainly like him to share his views with us. I see in our presence Mr. Raj Payar, who is the president of the Institution of Engineers, to which we AESM we are very grateful for having put this IEM house at our disposal. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, IEM. Mr. Bikan, it's yours.
All right, so thank you, the President, fellows of the Aeronautical Society, distinguished guests, members of the Society, ladies and gentlemen, so good evening. Thank you for your presence. So basically, it is a great pleasure, of course, to be here today standing in front of you, to have the opportunity to be able to portray one of the aspects that I have been discussing lately, which is called the Vanilla Alliance. Of course, I've been advocating about this idea lately because of the restarting of the airline industry across the globe after the pandemic COVID-19. This presentation paints a picture how the Vanilla Alliance 2.0 could be basically eventually fortify the aviation industry locally, regionally, and of course beyond that. My appreciation goes to the council members of the society for having invited me for this talk this evening. Moving forward, I'll give a little bit of an overview what I will be covering today, so that you can stay with me along the way. So it might be, I'm not sure, definitely I could notice some of the senior peers of aviation industry in Mauritius. Some of them could be knowing about the Vanilla Alliance, but that one is a little bit of a different perspective that I'm bringing today. We will be starting about what is the Vanilla Alliance, and I will be calling it the Vanilla Alliance 1.0 because there was already one Vanilla Alliance which was uttered in 2015. I will go through that. The second point would be we will be addressing aviation, COVID, and of course tourism. We are a touristic island, so it is obvious that the connectivity to reach our airline is only aviation. So these two will be going together. It depends on each other. The third point would be how was the African aviation at the pre-conflict time. So because all these will be giving us the fundamental so that we need to know how to move forward towards sustainability. There are different aspects in sustainability. I will be covering that as well because it goes into the title that we want that Vanilla Alliance 2.0 for the sake of sustainability. All right, so we will then be looking at the at the status of the members at the post-COVID level, meaning in October 2021. What is the status of the members of Vanilla Alliance 1.0? After that, we will be covering what is the role of the national airlines of these countries upon the opening of the borders. Finally, we will be tackling the strategy, what would be the strategy for building a Vanilla Alliance 2.0. And okay, that one is a little bit tricky, so I've mentioned about Vanilla Airlines. Maybe you can think what is it about. It's not even an alliance. That one is Vanilla Airlines, and I will be concluding about that one. And finally, I will just give a brief description about the Aeronaut Group. So what is the Vanilla Alliance 1.0? The alliance was defined by the support of the Indian Ocean Commission Group, and it regroups the different countries of Comoros, Madagascar, Mauritius, Mayotte, La Réunion, and Seychelles. So these are the countries that falls under the umbrella of Vanilla Alliance. And if I may ask, I will try to ask some questions just to see maybe if that doesn't bother you. Why is it it's called Vanilla? Why is it being called the Vanilla Islands? Yeah, yes, yeah. Okay, that's it, of course. So because they produce vanilla, but does Mauritius produce vanilla? Okay, so we go forward. So in 2015, there was the notion of enhancing the air connectivity amongst the Vanilla Islands through a corporation which is named as Vanilla Alliance. And that was unveiled in Madagascar. So to pinpoint over here, you would notice that it was created for the sake of enhancing the air connectivity between the islands, the different islands. That is the scope of the Vanilla Alliance 1.0. So you would it's just trying to boost the air connectivity between Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles, Comoros, La Réunion. So this is the Vanilla Alliance 1.0, the scope of it. But then 3 years after, the national airlines, they proclaimed that they would like to realize this mission. They would like to realize that Vanilla Alliance. But what happened? We moved forward and the COVID came. So the COVID hit the world even before the Vanilla Alliance 1.0 was even designed and implemented. So we couldn't, it was just halted, and that is where we are now. Now let's see a little bit of a glance. Where are we after what was the effect of COVID on aviation? Probably most of you would have seen these statistics, I'm pretty sure. So what is the financial loss in the year of 2020? It was up to 126 billion USD, that is global value. And how many jobs were being made redundant is around 1.3 million. We've even, that could have an effect of 3.5 to 3.5 million of jobs in the aviation sector only. So, of course, the 3.5 has not been reached, but the 1.3 million of jobs that has been made redundant is there. And, of course, what happened to the tourism? The tourism was brought back by 80%. So, almost even the year 2021 is considered to be challenging with a percentage of 80% compared to 2019. So the performance of the tourism, the international tourism, is still low as 20% only. I will be going through this graph. Please let me know if I'm going too quick. It's just trying to make a little bit make it interesting somehow. So over here looks into a graph that it shows, before that, I would like to ask a question. I don't know whether you have seen the graph, but there were different shocks before in the aviation. Like the pandemic is one of the shocks that we have been witnessed, but there were other shocks previously that really hit the aviation industry. So, yes, 9/11, and then you would be having, let me go through it. So you will be having the GFC,
We have the Gulf War.
you have the SARS, yes, it's not as much as the
And
Gulf
then the
War,
economic
yes.
crash. There was the economic crash.
Yes, the economic crash in 2008, GFC is called the GFC. So if you look into that graph, you can see the trend. So what happened to the aviation industry when COVID hits the world? You can see that the available seat kilometer, that is the passenger, how many passengers there were, the demand dropped within a month or two to 20%. That is very drastic compared to the other shocks that you will be seeing here. So it has been made unprecedented. That is why the word unprecedented is always here, because it was never being witnessed before of such a big shock. Now, considering the SARS here, can you see the reaction of the aviation industry? Rather than it was being brought, down, but at some point it was being revived, and it makes it better. That is, the demand was even higher. So why is it that demand came up to be higher? Was it registered as a higher demand? Because some of the airlines were not being operating. So since there was a shortage of airlines for certain regions, so then the ask is basically it gives also an idea of the cost. So perhaps some of you would know about these terms. So it is quite a common term, but I will not go into it very technical manner. But what you can observe is that the reaction of SARS here to the aviation industry and compare it to the COVID-19. So it's a very drastic shock. Now, let's look what was the performance of the aviation industry in terms of profit before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, so until 2018, the aviation industry, the airline industry was doing very well. Can you see the profitability? It was very high. There was no loss, unless the airline was doing a certain loss, but globally, the airline industry was doing very well. So there was an accumulated of profit up to that level in 2018. Of course, these two looks at this shock is the GFC shock. That's why you can have the drastic loss in the global airline industry. But after that, it was picked up again. Now, coming to that, having said that, there is no single event that provides a roadmap for recovery from this pandemic. But a combined, understanding of lessons learned from previous shocks events would be helping to chart a way forward. So that is where we need, basically, we will be needing the expertise, the consultants, to analyze how we can react to that pandemic. There could be different ways to react, but it will be depending on the country as well. So we will be seeing in a while a little bit of statistics again, so that you might be noticing. I will be explaining it in a manner so that you can catch it. So as you can see here, when we are going towards recovery, we are trying to look behind first. What was the performance before and also after? So let's compare it to 2019. So there was, in 2019, you could see that, it was doing well, and then we had the pandemic, and then it's being returning towards a recovery level. So this graph is showing different types of aircraft. You would be seeing the wide bodies, the narrow bodies, the regional jets, and the turboprop. So looking at these colors, the wide bodies are the darker blue. And the narrow bodies aircraft is this bit of blue, the pale blue, and the gray here is around the regional jet, and that one is the turboprop. So what can you observe from this graph is the flexibility of narrow bodies. So the number of flights that was being conducted, that was being registered, before, was the narrow bodies aircraft came up to be the contribution is much higher compared to wide bodies aircraft. You can see that the narrow bodies is almost dominating the graph here because of their flexibility to go. You know, they don't need, it's easy to fill up the plane, to make it in an easy manner to understand. It's much easier to fill up the plane because of the lesser number of seats, and you can go wherever the destination is Austin. But the wide bodies, still it was performing, but globally it's not much contribution towards the total number of flights. I will not go towards the regional jet, but you can see at least there is certain contribution, and of course the turboprop. Looking at the second graph to the right, what I would like to show here is the performance of the different aircrafts compared to 2019 again. So you will be having the different types of, this relates to the turboprop, regional jet, narrow bodies, and wide bodies aircraft. As you would be seeing, that the narrow bodies aircraft, they are picking up quicker because it's just only 18% less compared to 2019. So if you compare the performance at that time to 2019, the narrow bodies aircraft, they are doing much better than the other types of aircraft. Looking at the wide bodies aircraft, they are 40%. So it's not so easy for the wide bodies aircraft to catch up because of the international flights, and I will go through it, what are the reasons of these lacking behind of wide bodies. But I'm sure you will be able to guess why is that performance in wide bodies. All right, that chart over here, it shows the performance of aviation across the different continents, regions. But I would like you to look at it carefully. There is something striking in this table. The China, no minus. They are very resilient, isn't it? They are doing much better. All the rest of the region of the world, they are making loss. But China is picking up. At least for 1, 2, 3%, 8%, but it's positive. So this is something that you might be going through it. Why is it so? And how does the aviation industry is running? Why is it so resilient that they are still, after such a big shock, they are still doing much better compared to the rest of the world? Sorry?
It's domestic.
Yeah, it could be even domestic as well. So that is why I told you. Yeah, but all of them got domestic as well. See, the US will be having the domestic, the other parts of the world also, they do have domestic. But the willingness to travel is there, even if it is domestic, but they have to travel. Compared to the US, why is it that it is so negative? Although it could have been the points could be there for domestic flights. But you got a good point, it's domestic. All right, so this one is just resuming what is the performance of domestic demand compared to international demand. So the domestic is much quicker compared to the international demands because of the restriction of the vaccination, the recognition of the vaccination, the willingness. Why would they be traveling? Is there any need? For example, nowadays we have the digitalization, so we don't need to go abroad to have a meeting. We can just have a Zoom meeting and that's it. We are there. So these are the reasons basically why the international flights are lacking behind compared to the domestic flights. Okay, so let's go a little bit towards tourism. We have over here Mr. Raj, who was the previous CEO or president of NTPA, so I'm pretty sure that you will be interested in that. But okay, you are senior, I'm just relating what is here. So we have two scenarios that was being theoretically being forecast. Scenario 1 at a certain percentage and scenario 2 at a certain percentage. And solid line is basically the actual data, what is the real performance. So if you recall, I was saying that from January to July, the performance of the tourism was 80% less at my previous slide. So that was around that time, from January to around March, so somewhere over here. So it was minus 80%. or even more. So by now, we can observe that there is a certain picking up towards the international. This one is international tourists. So at a certain point that it is still minus 67% compared to 2019. So we need to pick up, but we need to accept also that the trend is there. How long will it take for the tourism to recover? So that would be one of the questions later on. And okay, so it's here already. So I would like to ask a question. When do you expect the international tourism to return to pre-pandemic 2019 levels in Mauritius? 2022? 2023? Or we go beyond that?
Beyond.
23.
23? Okay.
I think we also need to look at
Of course, there are many
what
factors.
government will,
Yes.
the policy of government.
Yes, there is.
It looks like when we say speaking up, it came down, government closed its borders,
Yes.
therefore traffic had to go down.
Have to go
So
down.
now it is removing restrictions.
It's picking up, yeah?
So, but still there are certain restrictions.
Yes.
So I suppose to answer your question, if the situation returns, let us say the environment, return to the previous, pre-COVID, then it could increase very fast.
Yeah, the rate could be much faster if the environment, the external
Because we also
environment.
listen to what government is saying. You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't believe.
Yes, yeah.
You know, when government says there is no COVID, somehow we don't believe.
Yes, yes.
So we may not be traveling because...
Yes, so that is the confidence for travel, right?
Yeah.
So the passengers will be looking for a certain confidence for them to travel. So I will be showing a statistics here. What was the feedback that the tourism expert gave when will the international tourism will be picking up? So as you can see, it's reflecting of your comments over here. So either around, most of them, half of the candidates. I mean, they were basically the panel, the tourism expert panel at UN. So they focused that half of them focused that it will be 2024 or later, but some of them is still almost half is saying that it's going to be 2023. So looking at the different region, what about the Middle East? Can you see? 2022. They want the tourism to come back even by next year already. Is it? Yeah, by next year. So they are quite optimistic. But maybe, like you say, it depends on the policy of the government. So it depends on that. I wouldn't say that we are really part of Africa because our situation is different as a touristic island. But as you could see, there is a tendency that we need to wait until 2024 so that things can return to normal. That is the perspective, the notion that is being dominating as of now, because this has been published just some days ago, so it's quite recent, and at least it's giving you an idea what would be the international tourism look like during the next couple of years. Okay, so some of them will be recognizing this diagram. I have to guess, please.
Why is the Middle East after 2024 going down?
No, it's not going down. It's saying that out of all the participants, 100% participants, 40% of the participants, they mentioned that 45% mentioned that the tourism will be recovering by 2022, 45% of the participants, and that is 9% only saying that. Yes, this relates to the number of percentage of participants' reaction. Yes, so it's not the tourism that is dropping, and 1% could be somewhere here. It's not really appearing, or maybe they did not give their feedback.
Just a question.
Yes, please.
On the previous slide.
That one?
No, the other one. Previous. Here.
Yes.
That 67%
Yes.
is that based on actual figure of tax who travel.
Yes, as you can see here, they define the actual data is preliminary and it is based on estimates for destinations which have not yet reported monthly results. So it is an actual data, but it's not really 100% as a complete, they have not been getting the full feedback. But at the very least, they can see that it's neither the scenario, the better scenario or the worst scenario. It's somewhere in the middle. But we don't know, yes?
Yeah. So in actual fact, that's 67%.
Yes,
When you look at the seat available,
Yes.
ASK,
yes,
then that's at 31. It means that the load factor
yes.
is like less than 50%.
Yes, of course.
So the other question to ask is, how long will some airlines be able to last to survive
At 50%.
until 2023 at 50%?
But unless you are using a narrow body. If you are using a narrow body aircraft,
Yeah,
you can still have a load percentage, a higher load with more packs, right?
but that's domestic travel.
No, not necessarily. No, this is not domestic. This
It's all combined.
yes. That one came up to be that table here. You mentioned that China could be having the domestic, but this graph here, it's the international number of flights. It's the number of flights that we are having, but we can see that definitely in my being humble in my statement, the narrow bodies will be having a better performance than the wider bodies because of various reasons. So that is also why over here. So this is also the general one towards a worldly percentage. Okay. And finally, we are moving forward. So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, yeah.
Yes. And okay, so what are the main factors that could contribute towards a effective recovery of international tourism? We have different ways, and the first one, I'm sure you have been witnessing that. So you have a widespread vaccination. The country needs to be 60%, 80% vaccinated so that the UN will be giving the permission to open your borders. If you don't meet this criteria, you cannot really meet up the requirements to open your borders to many countries. Okay, so the second one is about, of course, you need to lift up the travel restriction. The third factor that contributes towards an effective recovery is the coordination between countries about the travel protocol. And also it goes to the health protocol, the digital tools. Maybe in the Mauritius, I think we have now the digital vaccination that is being taken care of. And finally, the affordable coronavirus testing, perhaps for those people who want to travel, but they have a limited, capacity to buy. So maybe the affordable testing will be helping them to travel very quickly. So this graph is no more, am I right?
Yeah.
There is
No more, yeah?
there is one point missing, which in my opinion is the most important one, the antidote. And you know that Merck has just come out with something that stops the virus from reproducing. So as soon as this tablet will be out, cheap tablet, we take it, COVID over.
Okay.
Nobody dies anymore. And
Okay.
so
You mean the pills? You mean the pills?
There are the Australians and the Germans who have come already out with
Okay.
two kinds of inhibitors, the retroviruses.
So that one will be zero then, even
Yeah,
the top of
that
number
would be
one.
the thing that stops it immediately.
Yes, okay.
Basically,
Okay.
when it comes on the market.
All right. So, okay, they definitely maybe, thank you for your contribution, so I appreciate it. So maybe we have one more. By the time that I was drafting the presentation, it was there. But maybe there will be other solutions that could accelerate the recovery of the tourism based on other solutions. But of course, the air travel perspective has changed. This needs also to be taken into consideration. When people have been living towards these 2 years, their perspectives have changed. One of the examples is about sustainability, the environmental sustainability. People, some of them, they have really feel that there was a tranquility and the nature was breathing again, and they will be, some of them are taking this so serious that they mention they will be traveling only when it is really needed. They will not be traveling, just like that, because they know about the carbon emission and all these things. So there is a certain kind of perspective. A person that would be willing to go to a sun, sun, sea, and sun destination, maybe we'll be choosing another type of tourism. Maybe it would not be really the sea, the sun, sea, and sand. It would be another segment of tourism. So the perspective has changed. We need to maybe take this into consideration towards the recovery. And I would say also, serving the traditional routes again will not be sufficient for long-term sustainability. Let's say that one airline was traveling towards a certain destination A, B, and C, and if we keep believing that A, B, and C will be working again like before, it's not going to be the case. We need to work much harder towards developing new routes, because can you imagine what would be the consequence if you keep believing that A, B, and C destination A, B, and C will be working for you, will be filling up your aircraft, and that doesn't work. So you cannot wait for that. You need to anticipate that it will not be sufficient. We need to do some route development into that. Okay. This chart here shows the connectivity, the air connectivity concentration around the world at the pre-pandemic, 2019. What can you observe? Very, very striking in this.
Europe is the center.
Okay, Europe. Okay, you're very optimistic. You're an optimistic person. Maybe there is a negative comment also there. Easily. What about the Africa? Can you see how empty the continent is? Such a big continent, but the concentration is very, very low. You have only South Africa, could be somewhere over here, it's Ethiopia and Kenya, and that's it, not much.
There was something called the Yamoussoukro decision, which never came into effect. Because that decision, that decision was a country pair per day.
Yes, the SAATM, right? Yes, correct. So now we know the gap, but of course Africa is the way that the continent operates, the way that is the culture is there. So yes, we have obstacles, we have culture barriers, but still we know that it's been quite low for such a big continent. You know, Africa has 54 countries, and amongst these 54 countries, some of them have quite an advanced aviation industry, but some of them even don't have any aviation industry in their country. So we have been dividing the segment of Africa's aviation, African aviation. First of it would be the continental hub. For example, Morocco, in the North Africa. You have Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa. So these are basically the countries that are considered as the intercontinental hub. They are very strong. Their aviation industry is very strong. Then the second level is the emerging stars. We have noticed that there are around 25 countries in Africa that they are willing, that their government is willing to contribute to make aviation industry as a contribution towards their GDP. So they have their willingness. So we call them the emerging stars. I would say that Mauritius is moving from emerging stars to the intercontinental hub. But let's see whether it really achieved that target of being the highest one. The third position, we will be having the traditional aviation. Those countries, we have calculated there are around 20 countries in Africa that the country, if they need to innovate so that the aviation industry can contribute better. The willingness is not that much there, but if they do better, if the aviation industry do better, then it will contribute toward the country in a much greater leap. So this is categorized as the traditional players. And finally, those who doesn't have any aviation industry at all, like Lesotho. Lesotho is near South Africa, so they don't need any aviation industry because they can just jump to South Africa and have all the connectivity. So we have 4 segments in African aviation. Okay, so these are a little bit of statistics again. Africa, okay, what is the percentage of land just for you to see and to appreciate, that's all. What is the population and how much is their contribution towards GDP. But when we look about the contribution of passengers carried, it's only 2%. They are contributing only 2% of the passengers being carried per year, like during a certain specific year. So this is extremely low. But how low it is, maybe we will have to look into that. And okay, the cargo is not really interested, but it is relatively low. And maybe something could be interesting as well is about the jobs. So they do have, of course, a certain percentage of 8%, which is, I would say, quite reasonable. But if they have so many people working in the industry, why is it so low there? So the equation is not doing that great here, we can see. But we need to look also relatively. 2%, but what about the other countries? How are they doing? Oh yeah, before we go forward, I would like to ask some question. Maybe you have already mentioned one. What could be the reasons behind the significant lag in the African aviation? What are the reasons? One of it you've already noticed about the open skies. So some of the countries, they are not really opening their skies to other airlines to come in. But recently we have noticed a certain trend. We have noticed that Qatar, Emirates, Turkish Airlines are penetrating into Africa. They are seeing the demand already is there. And the countries are opening their borders to these airlines, and they are picking up the passengers a lot, I would say. So even that the SAATM is not realizing so quick, but we can deal with the specific countries to open their borders for a certain airline to take care of them. Of their passengers. So we need to work on this, but let me mention over here what are the three main reasons. The higher duties at the airports and all duties that are being related to aviation, the charges on fuel, and the limited access given to airlines. The charges to fuel, normally the percentage that the fuel is contributing towards the operating cost of an airline lies between 35 to 40. I would say even a little bit less. But in Africa, it goes beyond 45%, even to 50%, meaning that
taxes.
Yes, lots of taxes on the fuel. So that is why they cannot make it profitable. One of the key, contributor towards their operating cost is being very high. So this will definitely impact on their price ticket and everything. All right, okay, maybe that could be interesting for you guys. What is the airline passenger traffic based on the regional area? There is a general trend. We can see, yes. As you can see, the darker one is the traffic of the passenger, and that is the lane being spanned over the world. So for Asia Pacific, it is the highest. Second is Europe. Third is North America, and fifth is Middle East. But we can see in these cases that the aviation industry is doing better than their actual size of land. Okay, but Latin America, it is the reverse. And Africa, I just mentioned about the 2%, it is there. Can you see the size of the land is almost the same as Asia Pacific, but the contribution of passengers is 2% only. And we cannot say that the people in Africa don't want to fly. I don't believe so. There is something that needs to be worked on somehow to make it happen, because the mobility there, even at the regional level, domestic level, should be at least high, at least the domestic, if not the intercontinental. But we have been doing surveys, and we have noticed that the willingness to travel across the world to other countries is high. But they cannot do it because the cost of the ticket is high, or even the connectivity. I had a friend who had to travel from Malaysia, I think, and he had to go to Nigeria. So he needed to go to Turkey first, and then from Turkey go to another country. I cannot remember which country was that, and then come to Nigeria. And he took 3 days, he told me. 24 hours times 3, just to travel from Malaysia to Nigeria. Can you imagine how the connectivity is low? How is it difficult to travel? Yeah,
I suppose it's like, if you have to go to Senegal, from Mauritius you go either to Paris or London and then come down.
yes,
I was in Lusaka some time back to get back to Mauritius, so I was given a ticket from Lusaka up to Dubai. And from
yeah. Can you imagine that? Yes. So now we have two trouble over here. Now the first is the air connectivity, the facility, and the second is about the vaccination, the recognition, the corona. So it makes things much more challenging. But still, we can see that we need to work it out here. What can we do for that?
Nadia,
Yes.
what about this suspicion that these African governments have that if you open up, you give air access, it's a big airline that will come there, other people will come and take your traffic. That, I think, is embedded in their mind and you can't get it out. So they would rather not open up or
Yes.
just protect their own airline.
Yeah, maybe they are overprotective, or they want to have. They know that aviation industry, the airline industry, is something that is really bringing capital, money to it. So they want to. Perhaps they might be wanting to have the profit themselves, but they cannot make it. So they are still waiting how to make it. Until by then, it is being too late and people cannot travel. But like I mentioned now, there are the 3 legacy airlines that are going into Africa for many destinations already, many countries in Africa, and they are having Emirates, Turkish Airlines, and Qatar. So these 3, they are facilitating people, but they are having the lion's share, I would say, kind of like that. So we need to move fast. All right. To restart the aviation industry, we have been looking at the immediate, impact. We have been witnessing about that, but we know that also that the long-term implication will be substantial. Airlines will have to brace for certain transformational change, but to a certain degree that they were affected. I mentioned it here here, so it has a certain degree. You need a transformation change, but sometimes in your business model, but to a certain degree. We have also noticed that the international flights is slower than domestic aviation, and as you could see, the international passenger demand is 73% lower compared to domestic. So at least we have a certain trend here, how people are traveling. People are traveling within their own countries or region. So this is the trend. The international travel is a little bit big, not the same. Do you agree that there is no return back to pre-COVID scenario? Do you think that the aviation industry will be the same as before? Do you believe in that? No.
Somehow we feel something else will happen.
Isn't it? Right? So the scenario will not be the same. So I am right in saying that. Okay. At least because this is my statement. So I need to ask your opinion. It could be doing better. I'm not saying no, but it will not be the same scenario. The external environment is not the same now. So there are new trends that will dictate the sustainability of the aviation industry. Let's look upon that. Okay, before we look into the factors that will be contributing towards sustainability, we need to move from red ocean strategy to the blue now. We have to take this practice. What does it mean? Let's say that you have a certain product or service and it is very good. How do you do it? You will have at some point need to increase the cost. If you have something better, you will try to increase the cost so that it matches that value. So this is the red ocean. That is, the better the product or service, you will tend to increase it. You will tend to increase the cost. But the blue ocean says you break this relationship through a certain value innovation. Meaning that you find a certain point whereby you can give something better, but not at the price at a certain cost. You can keep the cost the same. So that is the new trend. The second one is before we would say that the strategic choice of differentiation or low cost. That is whether you are a boutique airline or a low cost airline. Either way. But no, for now, we need to have both. We need to have a differentiation in terms of your solution as well as low cost, so that it can make things, really moving forward. The third point, the red ocean says it exploits existing demand, but the blue ocean says you need to create and capture new demand. You need to create that demand. If it is not there, try to create it. Okay, so that are the way. And the next one would be, the red ocean strategy is where you compete in a certain market space. You keep competing. And the blue ocean strategy says that you need to create an uncontested market space. So you create your own market space. Finally, the red ocean is you want to beat the competition. And the blue ocean says you make the competition irrelevant. So if you can match these, can you imagine how strong are you? How strong will be your airline? This is just one aspect of a business in the aviation industry. If you apply it to all the businesses under the aviation industry, you're becoming very strong and you're picking up with the new trend. But if you keep like that, it's going to be catastrophic for sure.
What about no frills airlines?
Wait, sorry?
No frills.
Yes, no frills airlines.
Cut down almost everything.
Yeah,
These heavy magazines and the meals.
Yeah.
To them, you give to astronauts. Meals you give to astronauts, tablets.
Okay, like I said, there are the different trends that will be, dictating about the aero sustainability. We have 7 pillars, 7 trends, and the airline needs to make sure to adopt these. If an airline wants long-term sustainability, let's check whether they are doing this. If they are missing it, then maybe you are not 100% towards sustainability. The first one is about customer-centric imperative. Before, when travelers will be traveling, maybe you don't know your passenger. But now, airlines will make sure that they know their passengers to keep making them their customers. So they need that human touch there. The human touch should be there. The hospitality in the airline during a flight needs to be there. Otherwise, people will keep criticizing and might be, some passengers might be even choosing another airline, going to the same destination, but just because of the hospitality of that airline. They will be saying, okay, it's better, it's longer, but I'm more in a comfort way, right? So, if you want to be sustainable, we need to work on these. The second point is data analytics. With digitalization and everything, the data analytics should be very strong. They need to be able to forecast in a very precise manner about what could, not really predicting, but at least observing the trend, so that they can change their shape. Even if for temporary, they can change it. So this is called agility. They need to be agile. The third one would be about the environment, and most of them, one day or the other, you will be noticing that UN will be saying that certain aircraft will not be allowed to operate. So they will be pushing so that airlines can choose newer, more efficient aircraft because of the carbon emission and all these environment sustainability aspects. And about the tourism here, we have something that is called the new distribution capability. So there should be a robust, collaboration between the airlines, the travel agencies, and the management companies. If that is not really fit into that place, then your system, your equation is not that sustainable. You need to make sure that you are working in an environment where there is a collaborative spirit. And for us, Mauritius, we need to work on this very hard in terms of TPA, airlines, and airport. I will come to that later on. And about the fleets and networks, as I mentioned here, I'm saying about the next 5 years. They need to plan their route strategically, and they need to capture the opportunities that is there. They need to capture. Otherwise, Can you imagine, do you agree if we go to the same route as before, will an airline be sustainable? If let's say that, like I just mentioned, it will not be, isn't it? You need to work on this. You have to. That is where we are coming from with the Vanilla Alliance. I'm explaining all this so that you have a certain fundamental of it. So that when we come to alliance, you might be understanding. And of course, the strategic alliances, because that will be able to unlock possibilities and also realizing sustainable profitability, and it will bring many benefits depending on what kind of strategic alliance it is or partnership. But it is one way of attaining sustainability.
I think there's one missing there.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, talent management, sorry.
The one that I think is missing is that it's government to disinvest, get out of the airline industry and put it in the hands of people who know how to manage.
You mean privatization, is it? No.
Whatever be the name, but you get competent people there.
Oh yeah, this is where we come in. Oh, sorry, I missed that because of the. I think I couldn't really notice it. So this is where, yeah, it is there. So it's about need to manage adequately the talent, capacity building, and also leadership. It is there, so you have to.
I was just thinking of Air India.
Yes.
You know, government had a policy where the 563 members of parliament get so many tickets every one
Yes.
annually for them and their kids, their relatives, grandmothers and so on. So by privatizing, selling it to Tata,
Yeah, Tata.
that problem is solved.
Yes, for sure.
So government no longer has now to provide tickets for all those MLAs, you know.
For sure.
And you got them in every state.
Yes,
Not only the central
And can you imagine
Lok Sabha, all the 23 parliaments you've got there in each state.
just saving that?
Everybody just getting free ticket, you know, they get priorities.
Yes, saving that amount of money is already a big thing. For 5,000 MLAs you just mentioned, is it? Yeah. So yes, you are very right. We need to have this in place. That is where it is.
Excuse me, the other way is if you take Air France or even Air Mauritius, had not the government set in, your airline disappears.
Yes, of course. It would be high.
I mean,
disappear.
there are
It disappeared because the government was in to start with.
Yes. The government needs to, it's like
They were responsible.
yeah.
No, the
chicken and the egg,
of even before.
It's like the chicken
But
and the egg
still,
story.
if government doesn't step in, then where are you going to get that money?
Okay, I will be coming to that in a moment, and let's see what the debate says. Huh? So, what is the status of the Vanillas Airlines Islands Aviation? Okay, it's a bit texty, but I hope you find it interesting. The 4 airlines that are in the Vanilla Alliance 1.0, the existing one are Air Mauritius, Air Seychelles, Air Madagascar, and Air Australia. Okay, they are still surviving, but what are their conditions? Voluntary administration plus towards full nationalization. Air Seychelles. They got nationalization first, and then they go to voluntary administration. Air Madagascar, voluntary administration plus merging. Finally, Air Australia. They are forward-looking airlines, because the story is better. They are getting into strategic partnership, even if it is not just being announced, but they have at least moved forward with that. So these are the status of the airlines. I leave it to you. I will not read it. Please, I give you some moments. Maybe you can just go through it and see what it says over here.
What is the point of this slide?
Just for you to know the status
So what
of
you're showing is all government-owned airlines on travel and privately owned is
yes,
doing.
but at the very least, we need to know, because if we want for them to work together, we need to know their status, what are their current status. So having said that, we know that we can, for example, have a comparison how many, the debt was, how much they own, at this stage. That one is already being cleared, for example, and we have Air Seychelles, the amount, and we have Air Madagascar, and also we have Air Australia. So at the very least,
But the other thing that's very telling here is that when the going gets tough, then the other, the strategic partner pulls out. If you're reading your slide here,
yes,
ETL, when the going
yes,
got tough,
here, for Air Seychelles,
they pulled out.
yes,
They
yes,
pulled the plug.
yes.
So which means that tomorrow if you go private, for example in Mauritius, with an overseas partner, this could happen to us when the going gets tough.
Yes, definitely.
Pack up and go.
But of course, there is the pros and the cons, right? For a certain strategic alliance. But at the very least, that is why also the alliance, the way that it is being built should be very robust and a win-win situation. The way that, Air Seychelles operated, the feedback that I had is like, for example, the financials, the yearly financials were not being even published because it was being merged in Etihad's financial report. So you don't know how is the airline performing. So all these legal aspect of course comes into the picture to make sure that the strategic alliance is robust. But at the very least, now we know the trend because we will be working with these airlines for the Vanilla Alliance. That is why it's good to know their status as of now.
But another point here,
Yes.
Réunion, being Outre-mer,
Yes.
has a lot of facilities that the other islands don't have
Yes.
in the region.
Yes.
So that mustn't be neglected as well.
But that one, the Air Austral was part of the Vanilla Alliance 1.0, meaning they were in the agreement there. That is why we try to compare the 4 airlines that were already in the agreement of Vanilla Alliance. There is also the national airline of Comoros, but they shut down in 2017. Inter-Lille, je crois. I think, yes, Inter-Lille. So they shut down the operations in 2017. But now it remains only the 4. So let's see what we can do with them. It's just a proposition, like I mentioned. So first of all, these are the status of the different models of aircraft that each of the companies is possessing as of now. We can see that Air Mauritius is having wide bodies, okay, and then 3 ATRs. Air Seychelles is having 2 narrow bodies. Quick analysis. Air Madagascar is having 2 wide bodies, and Air Australia is having quite a balanced distribution of wide bodies and also quite wide body. Yeah, so it's quite in the middle, I would say. So in terms of Air Madagascar, now as of 2 days or 3 days ago, it's in the process of being rebranded as Madagascar Airlines because Sanasia they are merging together with Air Madagascar. It's just a subsidiary. Instead of having 2 companies, in this case, they are making it 1 company. So it's becoming Madagascar Airlines. And this is just a short takeoff landing aircraft, which goes around the islands and small islands only. So Air Mauritius 97, okay, that one is considered as 2, I would say. So 9, 2, 4.
That will be the 332, unless it's going.
Yes, I think that one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one.
It's going already.
That should be going.
Should be going, huh? So this wide body, yeah, I heard about that.
But then it's two 330 actually.
Is it 2 here, you sure?
Yeah, 2.
So the total number of aircraft, how many for Air Mauritius?
So it should be 4,
I think 9.
5, 6.
So now it's right.
9 is right, but
200 going.
Yes. Yes, correct.
when it's 2 330.
Yes. It will be changing a little bit, but as of now, it's.
But the number is right.
Yeah, but the numbers is right, and with the respect of the number of passengers, it will be almost reflecting, isn't it? Almost the model is more efficient. Okay. So, opening of borders. Yes? Yes, sorry.
Air Mauritius has got very little, no narrow bodies. So it will have to buy another body.
We need to buy. This is going to be very questionable. So we will be investing money.
8 to 20.
Yes, that one. 8 to 20. Yeah, this one is
Most
very.
likely.
This one is very flexible aircraft. With 100 and
No, but that's the reason they're
Yeah.
getting rid of whatever is
Yeah.
not efficient and getting
yeah,
new ones.
if they can take the money and trying just to replace without spending more, then it is acceptable at some point. Yeah. So, but they need to work out on their narrow bodies.
And I believe 2 more 350s are coming in 2023.
Yeah, what's on order?
Is it?
There are 2 more.
Yeah,
Becoming 6.
not delivered yet, no?
Not delivered, the government take it.
Then it will become 6.
Yeah, it will become 6.
Okay. Okay. All right. So moving next, these are the details that I have been compiling as of some days ago. What are the different airlines that are serving Mauritius after the opening of borders? So for Mauritius, Seychelles, Madagascar, and La Réunion. So of course, Mauritius have been opening the skies a lot, yes, to numerous airlines. Seychelles as well, and but what can you say about this slide? When you see that, what can you think of? If you see that long list of airlines coming to Mauritius,
Taking whatever tourists.
they are bringing a lot of tourists, is it? Or you say?
They're taking
Okay. So. This is what can happen basically. You know, the national airline, another airline can become the de facto airline of the country, meaning the national airlines is not doing the proper, analysis so that it can serve the country. So what would be then the role? If so many airlines are coming, of course they are bringing tourists. That is where I think you would know that TPA, there is a certain balance that needs to be there between the tourism board, the airports and the airlines. Because the airports would be happy to keep bringing other airlines coming to the country, having them to pay their fees. MTPA will be saying lots of tourists are coming. Okay, so MTPA is positive, airport is positive. But what about MK or the airlines, the national airlines? So all right. So finally, we have reached about the Vanilla Airlines 2.0. It's just very brief, but I hope you find it interesting. So these are the 4 airlines that we will be working on, and see whether we can create something out of them. First of all, the first step is to understand, because as I mentioned, we are a country which is really depending on tourism. So the air connectivity is the only way to boost the tourism. Huh? So this is the channel. The air connectivity is the channel. That is why we need to start by that. But looking at this chart, we can see that the Sun Beach category could take longer time to become to the pre-pandemic level. This is the analysis that was being made. So the survey says that, and our countries, the countries of the Vanilla Alliance, they fall into this category. So there are other types of tourism that we can explore, that we can work on to make sure that by the time that this one becomes normal again, so we are depending on other types of tourism. So basically what we want to do is we go beyond the sun, sea and sand and promote other incentives. We need to be agile and flexible in route development at both regional and international level, and we brand the Vanilla region. That is, we give the region a name. If we give the region a name, no elsewhere around the globe you can make it again as a Vanilla region, because that will become the identity. So once you have an identity, you become more stronger, isn't it? So then we can unlock potential. So this is the first point, the first step. The second step is about the route development. So there are some fundamentals that we need to work on to see how we can develop the routes. So first of all, we need to have the knowledge, the expertise for route development. The second is about to understand the strategies and the constraint and the perspective in building air connectivity, the equation between the airport and the airline. The third is about data analytics, like I mentioned earlier. You need to make sure that you can analyze the patterns of the capacity growth. The fourth step is about understanding what the airport and tourism trade boards can offer and incentives. So I mentioned over there in the previous slide about the incentives that the country can offer. And finally, which is the most important one, is to comprehend how to balance routes offering between incoming operators and the national airline. Because can you imagine if the national airline could take, for example, passengers from these destinations? You would be doing, the aircraft would be quite, I would say, not the 100% load, but if they are coming to Mauritius, so this means that they are having the number of passengers in their aircraft. So I'm not saying that we should not open our skies to other airlines, but what I'm saying is that we need to be able to balance it between the operating, the foreign airlines and the national airline. Because in our case...
But Nadia, I think the objective should not be just taking their passengers, carrying them by Air Mauritius. It should be additional passengers because, to the airport and others, whether it's Air Mauritius bringing in passengers or another airline, it's the same.
To the airport.
For the airport.
Yes.
So therefore, they should have a strategy. The airline should have a strategy where it sort of brings additional passengers. So that should be the additional traffic, not just taking the traffic.
But what about at the current status? Do you feel that you might be able to have additional passengers at this current moment? I'm not saying, because that is the question, is when to open, when to invite, and when to restrict. This balancing is quite important. That is the concept.
Can you please go back to
Yes.
the previous slide, the previous one, where you showed all the here. Just look at how many hub carriers there are here. Hub carriers.
Yes.
So actually, those people coming to Mauritius are not coming from one destination.
Yes.
We do point to point.
Yes.
In Mauritius. Whereas,
Emirates.
look at this: Emirates, Turkish, Saudi. All Emirates and Saudi promise that we are going to get people from the Middle East.
Yes.
I don't say we don't, we
Yes.
do, but it's in minority. And people coming on Emirates and Turkish, for example, especially Emirates, they are from all over the world.
Yes, all over the world.
Some people from Japan, Hong Kong, all the China are coming.
Okay, let's consider that one. What would you say from South Africa?
South Africa, we've got 3 carriers now, and that's
right.
yeah.
So at some point, that is, I'm not saying that like Emirates is like bringing passengers all across the world, it is a hub, but just about the balancing, the right balance, it's not like being too negative or pessimistic of closing the borders or optimistic about opening the borders to all carriers, but what is needed is, I believe, the right balance. So if we are able to make the right balance, at the very least, we will be having the routes where we can, our national airline can operate. So that is the idea of having the balance. Otherwise, I believe that if we keep bringing all the airlines towards Mauritius, yes, we are having tourists, we are having, the airports is having the fees, yes, but the national airline, the stake for the national airline is up to, the risk is too high at some point. So that is a bit that maybe we need to think of. But okay, let's move to that. Maybe that will be enlightening you a little. And the third step is about doing an analysis. It's maybe some of you would be knowing about that analysis. It is an analysis that takes into consideration the strength, the weakness, opportunities, and the threats. The strength and the weakness is the internal one, that is within the airline. The opportunities and the threats are the external one. So maybe there are other components that could be plugged in here, but I cannot make the list too long. At the very least, the most prominent one can be part of it. Let's see if you agree with it. If you have any idea, please feel free to share. But what is the strength of the national airlines? What are their strengths as of now? What do they have that is really say that we are strong in this? I'm taking this into consideration for all the 4 airlines, the Air Mauritius, Air Seychelles, Air Madagascar, and Air Australia. These are considering the four of them, together. So the strength maybe would be the modern and diversified fleets. Maybe the 4 airlines have somehow a strength in that. The second is about the hospitality conscious. Because we are touristic airlines, we have that in strong compared to another airline. Another airline could be having a higher hospitality level, but we need to define at least what are we strong in. So let's say that we are strong in this, and what are our weaknesses? Route development, maybe we need to know, do we know really how to create new route development? Cost containment, because we were doing loss during all this time. So there is something wrong in the equation of the financial. So that is why. Dependent on passenger revenues as well only. So the company is depending only on passenger revenue. And the higher cost tickets, normal. Sometimes it's normal because of the load and everything. The cost of the tickets somehow is a little bit higher. The opportunities that are there is the opening of the open skies of Africa, the new perceptions of traveling within passengers, the Vanilla Islands branding, it is an opportunity, and the knowledge-based society, that could be also an opportunity. And what are the threats? The joint ventures with legacy airlines. Some of the national airlines could really go into a joint venture like Etihad and Air Seychelles before, but maybe in these times in a better way, kind of. Low-cost carriers, and the low recovery of Sensi and Sen segment. So these are the threats.
When should cost containment profitability? What do you mean, the high cost base?
No, meaning that they don't know how to contain the cost. Their operating cost is too high. Yes.
High cost base.
Yes. Yeah. So these are the weaknesses, because all the free airlines are in trouble now financially. So from these, we try to build a way to combine the strength with the opportunities, the weaknesses, the opportunities as it is here, to find a solution. This is a matrix of solution. Let's see if it is feasible or not. So combining the strength and opportunities, what can be the outcome? The outcome could be create a market at regional level and expand to an uncontested international market space via an optimized use of combined fleets, meaning that all these airlines, they combine their fleets together and they optimize, in a way that they create the market. Okay, so they need to do it together. But having all these, if you combine all these aircraft, you will be having a big arena of type of aircraft, right? So using this to create the market, they might be coming quite strong. The second is about combining the strength and the threats, meaning that how can you use your strength to counter-attack the threats that we mentioned previously. So what we can do is about the hospitality is one of the strengths. So we call it as the Vanillian hospitality, it's something like an identity. And we instill a win-to-win spirit in the business model, meaning that when we do the strategic alliance, we make it in such a way that it is a win-win situation. We need to make sure that it is a win-win situation, otherwise it's no use. So this is how you counter-attack the threats that are the low-cost carrier, the possibility of getting a joint venture in your company. So that could be the one solution. The weaknesses, how can you use your opportunity, the opportunities that you have, to make your weaknesses disappear? So in kind of. So like I mentioned, let me go before, I mentioned over here knowledge-based society. Yeah? So this is why I started from this. Of course, you need to acquire knowledge, consultancy, training, okay, while you build the framework, and of course making sure that at the competitive pricing strategies to meet up the new travel perceptions while ensuring cost containment to attain profitability. So I have made this into one sentence. as you can see. So it needs to make sense. If you know your weakness and you have a certain opportunity that is there, you need to use these opportunities to address your weaknesses. And finally, how can you convert your weaknesses and threats into something positivity? So you set a clear vision. Okay, for boosting the members' country's economy. It's not only the airlines now. You need to make sure that the alliance is something that can really bring benefit to the country. And I have mentioned over here, just for the sake of it is there now. So why not having this to attract the other airlines? Because these capabilities, in a way, you will be having lots of capabilities through this. So that could help the other airlines to make sure that they can have all the services under that AHL. So that is a little bit on the Vanilla Alliance, the positive way that the Vanilla Alliance can bring in. And finally, the synergy. It's a bit repetitive, but these are the key aspects. So fleet usage, tariff and service, allied services. You have also human capital development into that. The branding, the trade, air cargo, and sustainability in the way of environmental, social, and economy. It is very broad. It's not, of course, I cannot come here with a very deep and strategic with all the details, but at the very least, you can look how the synergy could work for this, rather than being, standing alone. And you need an integrated system. That is what I was referring earlier. You need to have the tripartite, partnership or collaboration between the national airlines, the airports, and the tourism boards. This is how the Vanilla Alliance can really make it there. This should be very set and clear. Okay, so for the air services, how do the national airlines decide which airports to build connectivity from? They need to decide that. The second is how to bring the member countries closer through their airport opportunities. That is what I mentioned about AHL. The airline perspective about the data analytics, the marketing incentive by the tourism boards, the airlift and tourism, again about the tourism, and finally, measuring performance. So you need to have that, of course. Without this bit, you can do whatever you want, but we need to be able to measure what is the performance out of the Vanilla Alliance. Okay, my final slide, almost the final. This one needs to be read as if you are in 2050. So it is a super. That's why I say was. It's just a story.
Don't you think in 2050 we'll be flying by rockets?
I know we'll be having lots of comments for this. I know. Like I said, it is a story. It's good to read, isn't it? So it is there, but there is one model that is which has adopted that quite long time ago. The SAS, if you would know. So maybe you can look for it. The SAS.
Yeah,
you know about that? So it's there, but of course we cannot duplicate. I'm not saying duplicate, but it's something that can go beyond an alliance. Yes. Okay. So, and finally, this is the conclusion. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. So it's been quite long. So these are the conclusion. The conclusion for the Vanilla Alliance. First of it is what we would like is having a branding of a new identity. The second is about the cost-effective tickets and differentiated boutique-oriented means, hospitality service, so that you can keep yourself at a competitive edge. The third would be about initiation of a robust regional air connectivity, and also at the international level. The fourth is the synergies. The fifth relates to the higher prospect for the airlines to achieve sustainable profitability, and the sixth is we need to put AHL because it's being proclaimed that it will be, something big. So they might be serving these capabilities. And finally, the possibility, which I have just said about the story. And I believe that this will be the last slide on Vanilla Alliance. I will just give a brief overview of what is Aeronaut Group so that you can get an idea. So we are a group and we have 6 subsidiaries as of now. I was teasing someone earlier. I was saying that NAT doesn't mean come from my name. It means Nurturing Acadestry Development. We have come up with a notion of Acadestry, which means merging academia and industry. So we wrote a paper on that. We explained about the notion of merging, the need to merge academia and industry together. Without that balance, it's not really sustainable again. So that is our vision as well. And our first division is about strategic and about consultancy. The second one is a moral business, not for Mauritius, but we do. The third is about aviation, education and training. You can go to aviation here. We have a lot of training that we conduct with C-level executive. And if you have a certain background, you are most welcome to be part of our coach and our trainers. We have, we deliver it as of now. It's being online, but it's being, we have the certificate being backed up with our partners and everything. So the training, we have ESR training and also executive masterclass. The masterclasses are for upper managers and executives. As for the ESR training, is for both for aircraft engineers. It's from ESR accredited together with our partners. Aeronaut Plus is about simulation and modeling. Aerodrone is aerospace drone solutions. And finally, Aerojoys is about the Aerojoys technologies, although that it is an aerospace technology, but we are trying to serve the society through it, to make the technology available to consumers through that. So it's not only for aerospace, it's trying to use aerospace technologies to serve the society. And I believe that will be all for today. Thank you for your attention. It's been, I hope that you find the presentation interesting and striking.